more speech, and we'll get to the members of Congress panel. But thanks for calling this hearing today. The devastation that Hurricanes Helene and Milton created in the Southeast and Appalachia is gut-wrenching. Over 200 individuals lost their lives to Hurricanes Helene and Milton. The storms have left over $170 billion of damage in their wake. So that's the dollar amount we know of. Damage to water infrastructure in western North Carolina was so severe that much of the region still does not have drinkable tap water. To aid affected communities, the administration approved major disaster declarations for Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. So the recovery will take a lot of work, and we are ready to provide the resources needed. And I'm grateful that Representatives Edwards and Castor are here today to share what they've seen on the ground in their districts as a result. And I think they, along with the rest of Congress, would agree that we have to focus on passing a disaster supplemental immediately. Without funding, federal agencies, including FEMA and the Small Business Administration, cannot fulfill their missions and help disaster survivors. For over a month now, the Small Business Administration Disaster Fund has been empty. In that time, the applications of over 11,000 survivors have been approved for disaster loan assistance, but they will not receive any money until Congress makes more funding available. It's not a new problem. Congress has failed to approve critical long-term recovery funds for disasters in 2023 and 24 that occurred in 21 states, ranging from Alabama and Arkansas to Texas, Vermont, and Washington State. FEMA's Disaster Relief Fund is once again approaching concerningly low levels with less than $5 billion remaining. It sounds like a lot of money, but it is not a lot of money when you consider the cost of these disasters. Disaster survivors should not be left wondering if promised disaster aid is coming. After losing everything, families should be focused on rebuilding their lives, not worrying about congressional dysfunction. Again, this is not isolated to the challenges that the people in North Carolina and Florida are facing. They are challenges that even my constituents are facing from previous disasters. So I would just call on the Speaker to schedule a vote for Congress to consider President Biden's $100 billion disaster supplemental request as soon as possible. Now, in the wake of catastrophic disasters, it's important for Congress and FEMA to take stock of lessons learned. The misinformation that has circulated after recent disasters is creating barriers to recovery and putting disaster relief workers at risk. The presence of misinformation after disasters is not new. After Hurricane Katrina, false reports of widespread looting bred chaos and led to the tragic shooting of civilians, as an example. After the Maui wildfires, bogus claims that the federal government would steal survivors' land were widely circulated, harming those in need of assistance. And however, false rumors following Hurricane Helene, especially in North Carolina, were described by Administrator Criswell as the worst misinformation she's ever heard. These rumors increased distrust in the federal government, resulting in armed threats against FEMA workers in the field and caused some survivors to refuse federal assistance. The spread of misinformation on social media after disasters is increasing, and this committee needs to work with FEMA to find solutions that can contain this phenomenon in the future. Disappointed that the President-elect himself amplified the misinformation by falsely claiming FEMA spent all of their funding on housing undocumented migrants. We can have a difference of opinion on whether that funding should occur, but that information was false. He also said FEMA would provide only $750 to disaster survivors who lost everything, which again is false. To set the record straight, disaster survivors may be eligible for up to $42,500 of home repair assistance and $42,500 of other needs assistance from FEMA, and perhaps the debate we should have is whether that should be increased or not. And it is the responsibility of all members of Congress to correct that record, regardless who is providing the misinformation, and lead rather than amplify. Lead in providing good information like Representative Edwards did unapologetically and consistently in Western North Carolina. Now, reports following Helene and Milton also indicate it's still too difficult for survivors to access FEMA assistance. Again, not isolated to Helene and Milton, same problem in my district and many other districts around the country in previous disasters. First, the lack of a universal application for federal assistance means survivors may have to complete separate applications for several federal agencies to receive